Kia ora koutou. Welcome to the sixth and final webinar in the Optimize Online Marketing webinar series. Today's topic is Search Engine Optimization and Marketing. My name's Helen Bartle and I'm the Senior Advisor, Audience Development and Capability Building at Creative New Zealand, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this session. This morning's webinar will be presented by Tom Butlin, Senior Search Analyst at SureFire Search in Auckland. Tom has 14 years experience in online marketing, and he's worked extensively with Auckland Live, formerly The Edge, to promote venues, international events and one-off local shows. So this session is a great opportunity to learn more about search engine marketing in the context of the New Zealand arts sector. We're excited to have Tom join us on this webinar to share with you the difference between organic and paid search and how they should work together, the importance of local and mobile search and how to set these up, and developing your website content to suit your visitors, rank on Google, and of course, look absolutely stunning. We will break midway through the webinar and at the end so you can ask Tom any questions you might have. For anyone that's new today, you can use the Q&A box or the chat box to ask a question. You're currently on mute, but to unmute yourself to ask a question during the break, you can press *6. We'll also post the PowerPoint slides and the webinar recording on Creative New Zealand's website after the session. So, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Tom, who will lead us through today's webinar. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much, Helen. Welcome everybody all across New Zealand. And as the introduction said, I have 14 years experience in online marketing, and I have got finer and finer in terms of my specialities. And I've previously managed publishers' websites. I also managed Unitech's website, so I have a lot of experience in terms of managing content as well as online marketing. And I now specialize in search, and even now I'm specializing more and more in the area of paid search. As everything gets more and more complicated, I'm really enjoying working in just this one sector. So what I really want to talk about today is the sort of strategies that you as arts marketing people should be using, and some of the ways that you need to understand how Google displays results. I obviously can't teach you every trick in the book, and indeed there aren't tricks. They are just good, solid practices. So what I'll be doing is helping you with the content that you use and the systems that you have in place so that your content is Google friendly. And when I say Google, I mean search engine friendly. Most people think of Google as search, but Bing is also pretty important and will get more important in New Zealand. If any of you have happened to have used a Microsoft tablet or got a new PC with Windows 8 installed, you will find it very, very hard to actually not use Bing. And so that's really something that we need to sort of look at, is the market is becoming wider than just Google. So what I'm going to start off with is firstly sort of outlining what the state of search is at the moment, and then I'll delve into some of the tactics specifically for organic and paid search. Okay, I'm going to condense 200 Google engineers' expertise into 2 slides, and this is, of course, my take on Google's expertise. The first slide, I'm just going to use a typical sort of search that many of your audience would be using. I'm just searching for tickets to the Civic. And as a searcher, I'd expect to find information about the Civic, preferably the Civic in Auckland rather than the Civic theatres elsewhere in New Zealand and around the world. And I would expect to be finding something that would enable me to actually buy tickets fairly easily. So this is actually quite an interesting search because out of the 5 results that have come up, you'll notice that the top 3 have the little yellow ad beside them, and the next 2 are organic results. I would only consider 2 of these to be actually relevant, useful results, which is actually quite unusual from Google's perspective. Normally you'd expect 5 out of 5 to be highly relevant. So let's just delve into this a little bit, and it'll just give you a bit of an understanding as to where Google is going. Okay, so the top ad is for Auckland Live, which, no surprise, comes up at the top, and I'm pleased to see that it is there since I placed that ad. The second and third ones, they're actually nothing whatsoever to do with the Civic. And as I said, it's quite unusual that you'd see such badly placed ads on Google. Google's philosophy is that they want the search ads to be as relevant as the organic results. And although they make money from the ads and they don't make money from the organic, they are taking the long-term picture. They only want relevant ads. It's not in anyone's interest to have irrelevant ads on Google. It annoys the users, it's wasted money for the advertisers, and it just makes Bing look like a better search engine. So Google are not actually pleased to see those two ads there. So they actually do an interesting thing that I'll explain in a little more detail later, is they actually punish those two companies for being so lazy and allowing their ads to show up there. Now, I think I know why those two ads have shown up. They are not just targeting tickets. They're targeting the phrase tickets to, because they want tickets to Australia, tickets to Sydney, tickets to Melbourne, and tickets to everywhere in the world. So rather than bidding on 1,000 or tens of thousands of tickets to and then place names, they've just gone the slightly shorter route and said, let's search for anything that has the phrase tickets to in the search term, and then we'll put our ad for flights up there. Very, very few people wanting tickets to the Civic will ever click on those two ads, and Google, again, will not actually appreciate those ads showing up, and what that will do, as I state in the comment there, it's harmful to Cheap Flight's whole AdWords account. What that actually does is it just introduces an extra level of cost and worse ad placement for all of Cheap Flight's and Flight Centre's advertising. So Google punish you by making it more expensive. So if you come back to the overall philosophy with how Google want to run search, they want the search to work for everyone. And again, that one of the best ways to politely instruct Cheap Flights and Flight Centre not to do what they're doing is to make it more expensive for them. So let's just have a quick look at the organic results there. So bearing in mind, this is a search for tickets to the Civic, and I would expect it to be the local Civic to me. In this case, it is the Civic in Auckland. I haven't specified where the Civic is, and I'm assuming that it will be fairly local. So the first organic result is actually great. It is Ticketmaster, and it's not just Ticketmaster's homepage, it's actually going to Ticketmaster's page on the Civic. So that's actually a great organic result. Ticketmaster have built their site in such a way that the page that is specifically about the Civic has come up #1 organically on that search. So they've done everything right. Well, almost everything right. If you have a look at the title, that is the dark blue bold writing where it says The Civic Auckland Tickets - Ticketmaster. That's a great title. That really corresponds to what I'm searching for, and it reassures me that it's a good result and worth clicking on, and it's got the brand Ticketmaster there. So I know I'm not going to the Civic or to Auckland Live. I know I'm going to the ticketing site, and the chances are I'm going to recognize the Ticketmaster brand. So that's great work. The description, now that's the next two lines in gray. I hope you can see it there. What Google does is it will use your official description, the one that you've written. However, if you haven't written one, or the one that you've written is, in Google's eyes, not very good, they may well take content from the website and display that instead. And that's actually what's happened here. If you actually look at the description, it isn't actually making grammatical sense by the Civic Auckland tickets. It's just a bit clunky, and that's quite likely to be a system-generated description. Okay, so I'll talk about a little more about writing titles and descriptions as we go on, but I just want to introduce a third little area there. You'll see that it has 3 dates for Annie underneath. Now that's an interesting and very seldom used little bit of search. It's using something called schema or data highlighting, where what it's actually doing is Google is now starting to understand the content of Ticketmaster's site, and is starting to bring that deep content up within the context of dates and events and places. So that's why it's actually got those little details in there. So I'm not really going to talk about schema or data highlighting because they are quite advanced things, but that just shows you why that particular result is using something that's quite unusual in it. Now, the very final one there, those of you who know when Wicked performed in New Zealand will know that it was last year. So that is actually quite a problem for Ticketmaster. They should actually have archived the content on their website so that it is no longer listed, because quite frankly, if you click on that thinking, great, I'd like to go and see Wicked, you'll find that it sold out something like 10 months ago, which obviously doesn't work for anybody. So that's a bit of an administrative issue that Ticketmaster need to address. Okay, so let's just move on to the second slide, showing you how Google works. Now, this is a different search. I'm searching here for the Civic. And you'll notice instantly that the structure of the page is totally different. Now, in the old days, the search page was the search page. It was very predictable. You had 10 links on it and you knew what was there. Now, it is an absolute mix. And there are numerous different sources of data being pulled onto the page, not just ads and organic. And in fact, some experts have counted 25 different types of data that Google is pulling onto the search results page. You'll see it's pulling images, it's pulling maps, it's even pulling customer reviews. So when I talk about organic and paid search, I really do need to be talking about approximately 23 other kinds of search that are contributing to the search results page. So let's just go in a little more and you'll just sort of understand perhaps a bit more about how you need to look beyond Google. So the first result is an ad, and again, this is an ad that I placed, so I'll give myself a high five on that one. Compared to the previous slide, you notice there's only one ad, whereas the previous one had 3. Again, Google has a wonderfully complicated algorithm that nobody seems to understand, but in this case, they've chosen only to put one ad up there. Okay, the next bit of content there is actually coming from Google Plus Local, which is a different source of information. And this is something you may well have started dabbling a bit in Google Plus, either personally or for your organization. So here, there's actually a Google Plus listing, and that is really where you can put a bit of extra information like phone numbers, and it's not your normal website. So the data is coming from the third source, which is Google Plus Local property. It actually took me a little while to understand this, and I was looking at the web address there that says The Edge, which is, if you don't know, the old brand for Auckland Live, and it's being phased out. In fact, has been phased out. So I had a minor heart attack when I saw that and thought, what have we done here? But there's actually a little Google Plus Local property which we now need to update, which isn't that hard to do. So you'll notice it's bringing in stars, it's bringing in reviews. So it's looking beyond just what's on your website, and it's looking at other websites, and it's looking at the social and relational context. So it's looking at what other people are saying about the Civic. So all of a sudden, you need to look beyond the properties that you control. So let's just move on a little more. So you'll see the images and the maps, things like the capacity, it's all being pulled from different sources. The organic result there, so that's actually, you'll notice that the third listing that comes up when you search for the Civic is from the Auckland Live website, which is the organic result. So you'll notice that was not the #1 organic result on the previous slide, but was tickets to the Civic. So it is coming up on a search for the Civic. So it's more of an informational and less of a transactional search. So as you can see, you've got a lot of work to do, really. I'm sorry I didn't make life easy for you, but you also need to look at other things like Wikipedia. The information on the right is what's called knowledge graph, and that's where Google uses trusted sources of information like Wikipedia, and other sites that they might use are, what's the travel website called? and obviously you can't shout at me because I can't hear you. The TripAdvisor, there we go. So TripAdvisor will be a trusted source of information that Google will display on there. So you now have to run off and update your Wikipedia entry because that may well be used on search results that are related to you. Okay, so yeah, finally, as I said, there are 25 Google properties that can be used on the search results page, and they include organic ads, images, video, news, shopping, maps, reviews, knowledge graph, even recipes. If you are searching for obviously some type of food, it will actually bring up specific recipes in a recipe format. So it's probably unlikely to be that appropriate for you people in the arts industry, but you never know. Certainly if I were a food manufacturer, I would be very interested in the recipe content, and I would be wanting to actually put my ingredients into recipes. So that if someone searches for a particular recipe, I would rather a recipe comes up that has my ingredients in it than a recipe that is written by Great Aunt Mary that doesn't necessarily have my branded ingredients in it. But anyway, let's move on from that. A little bit more about organic search. There are over 200 factors that are considered to determine ranking for every single search that every single person does on Google. It's like the KFC secret sauce. No one actually knows what those 200 factors are. They change as much as several times a day, and Google are continually experimenting. And in fact, one of the biggest changes that happened late last year was called Hummingbird, and the entire search industry didn't actually know that it happened for a month. People started suspecting something different had happened, but the change was quite structural and very, very hard to detect. So that caused a lot of soul searching amongst the search industry. Some of these factors are actually a little confusing. Some of them are actually counterintuitive. For instance, one factor that determines ranking is how old is a domain name. So if you bought your domain name 15 years ago, that is going to help you rank better than someone who bought a domain name last year. Obviously, you're old, you're established, you've been around. However, on the almost flip side to that, Google prefers fresh content to old content. So the website that was launched last year with nice fresh content may rank better than a website that actually hasn't changed for 15 years. So looking at those two factors together, obviously you want a nice old domain name, and we can't change that. If you don't have a domain name right now, you've got to go and set one up. But if you have a nice old domain name, you'd need to, without being silly about it, you do need to keep your content fresh and updated. So you want to change what's on your homepage. And I don't mean change for the sake of change, but you need to just continually evolve and keep it updated as time goes by. So there you go. There are 2 out of the 200 factors, and we'll be here for a couple of days if I try and go through the remaining 198. And of course I will be wrong because they will have changed by the time that I've got to the end of the list. Okay, very interestingly, 20% of searches are unique. Google has never ever seen them before. Now you'd think with the billions of searches that are carried out every day, Google will have seen pretty much everything. But what's happening is as people are using voice search, things like Siri and the Google voice search products, people are actually entering far, far longer search phrases. They're not just searching for tickets to the Civic. They're going to be searching for tickets to see Annie at the Civic on Wednesday the 28th, best price. So as they start to add more context around what they're saying, I mean, it's easy to say that, you will be going through to the page that isn't just the Civic. It's going to show you tickets to the Civic to Annie on the 28th and hopefully give you some idea of the best price. So, that is changing quite dramatically. There's actually quite a bit of relevance there that will come into paid search when we start to think about unique searches. So you may think you've covered every search that's possibly relevant for your organisation. Think again. And a lot of other things that Google uses, it's looking at the location and it's looking at the device. If you search for a coffee shop from your home, Google will give you a different set of results than if you search for a coffee shop when you're on your mobile. And again, if you're using your mobile phone on Wi-Fi, it'll give you different results to if you're using your mobile phone and you're not using Wi-Fi. Again, Google thinks you're traveling, so it's going to look at other sources of information and give you different kinds of data. So the other option as well also is personalized search. If you use a mobile phone, you will find Google's always encouraging you to sign in. You sign in to use your Gmail, you'll sign in to use Maps, etc. And there's a single unified sign-in. So as Google knows more information about you, it will start to personalize the searches that it thinks you are most interested in. So again, every single person will actually see a unique set of search results based on their history, their location, their device, the search phrase they entered. There are numerous factors. So it does make it a little awkward to optimize a site for search when it's so varied. But then there's a bigger picture that Google's working towards. And 10 years ago, organic search was a relatively easy occupation because you simply focused on the keyword and Google would hopefully rank you and you could compete with your competitors. Now it's very, very hard to know where you're ranking on every single person, and a lot of the keyword data is actually being encrypted and is no longer available for marketers to actually look at. So we're losing data in terms of what people are searching for. And Google's advice is to focus less on the keyword and more on the context. So if you are promoting a particular event in a particular city, then Google will be looking for things that are related to what the search is. So it's going to look for third-party reviews. It's going to look for maps. It's going to look for parking details to your venue. It's going to be looking for videos that are related to the show that you're promoting. It's also going to be looking at some social signals, including Facebook, Twitter, and so on. It doesn't necessarily use those social signals to say, hey, this site's got 20,000 Facebook likes, therefore it's a good site. But it's doing it to say this site is part of a social community, therefore it's more likely to be a good quality, authentic result. So you, in effect, are competing not just with the normal people you think you're competing with, you're competing with 1,000 websites that you've never heard of. And so if there's some little website that's made by some computer tech guy in his garage, it isn't likely to have the rich context that your site does. So that means you'll rank better than some little website that's just trying to sell a few tickets to a few shows. So the context is something that you need to develop. And so that really comes back to the content you're putting on your site. You need to have maps. You need to have parking details, put in the videos, make sure you've got a Facebook like button and you're integrating your website with your social sites, and think about the whole context of how people are researching and reviewing and liking and sharing information. So if that sounds a little bit scary to you, it's not meant to be. That's the sort of thing that's scary to that little guy working out of his garage because he lacks the context that you as a real organization have. You will have links to and from your partners, other people in the arts industry in New Zealand. If you're a venue, you will have links to and from the shows that come to your venue. If you are a dance company, you will have links to and from the venues that you work at. Again, it's the context, and it helps provide all the authentic people with a richer tapestry of the context in which you operate. And one other thing that you can really, really help your websites by doing is looking at the post-click behavior. Now, you may think this is a little bit big brother, and indeed it is, but if you think about it from Google's perspective, they don't want to send people to a website and then have that person back on Google 5 seconds later. Obviously, if you only last 4 seconds on a website and a couple of seconds for travel, it's not a good website. it's not in Google's interest to send people to a site that doesn't work for them. Even if Google gets paid for it, they want to get paid for sending people to a good site. So again, imagine if Google has 2 websites that it could send people to, and it's trying to decide which one is the better website. If it detects that a lot of people come back to Google within 5 or 10 seconds of being sent to site A, and then the average length of time that people come back to Google for another search is 2 minutes from site B, it's going to infer that site B is the better website. So there are a lot of other variables that it considers, but if you come back to that basic thing of Google wanting to provide the best results it can for people, post-click behavior, i.e. getting people to stay on your site and engage with your content, is going to benefit not just organic search, but it's tremendously beneficial for paid search as well, as we'll discuss in a few minutes. So, if you're thinking, oh yeah, should we bother shooting this video, or someone's shot a video and it's going to take me half an hour to edit it, and then I'm going to put it onto my YouTube channel. Well, great, do that, and then embed your YouTube video onto your homepage or onto one of the deep pages on your site. Encourage people to come to your site and stay on it and engage with it. If you're thinking about putting out some tweets, well, why not embed your Twitter feed on your website as well, so that people spend just that little bit more time reading your tweets on the website. So think about your post-click, which is think about the rich content you have on your website. Nothing's wasted if you're doing good stuff. Okay, I'll just do a couple of fairly sort of technical bits here before we sort of break for questions. So the key things that you as arts practitioners, and probably not search engine experts, although 1 or 2 of you may be, the things that you can do on a daily basis, obviously rich content, write the good stuff. No one knows your content as well as you do, so write it, have pages that talk about the local cafes and parking, etc. But what you can do is make sure your title tag, now that's the blue text that appears on the search results page, that's critical. 55 to 60 characters, don't write more than 60 or they'll be truncated with a ... So you'll just lose that little bit of control. Write them for humans and for Google. So it doesn't need to be the Queen's English, but it must make a decent bit of sense. Unique. You can't just use the same title across 20 or 100 pages. Google, again, doesn't like that, and it will penalize you for that. Keyword rich, and I don't mean repeating things. So don't say Rotorua Opera, Rotorua Opera, Rotorua Opera as your title. Rotorua Opera, tickets, talk about a few other things and location and the brand, etc. And a good idea is, and you'll often see this, is people might use, say, 40 characters and then have a dash and then their brand name, and that's automated. So that goes on the end of every title. So it might be upcoming shows and events dash Rotorua Opera. So it just provides a consistency, and you've got your brand included in every search. Now the description tag, that is a little bit interesting because it doesn't influence Google at all. However, it's very important for Google, which sounds a little bit contradictory, but you write the description tag for human beings. So don't repeat what you've said in the title. Well, you can put the same words in there, but don't feel that you need to repeat it, because the description is only ever shown alongside the title. So think of it as a headline and the introduction, really. So you've got up to 150 characters. Again, it must be unique. If you use a boilerplate description for all 100 pages on your site, even though it might be a well-written description, it's not going to help you. You need to say, why should people click on this result, not the one above it or the one below it? So write for human beings. Again, you don't need to use the Queen's English, but it's got to be fairly concise and grammatically correct. And just help people. Yes, this is the one I want to click on. Now, Google does an interesting thing. If it doesn't like your description or you don't have a description, it will use content from your web page. And I'll just show you a little example of that. So don't panic if you haven't written your descriptions, or you go, oh my goodness, I've got 400 pages on my website. How am I going to get time to write all of them? Maybe just write the ones for your most important pages. There's another thing that is used very, very commonly, and those are the H1, H2, and H3 tags. Those stand for the headings. So you'd have one H1 tag, so that's the main heading. That's the main topic, the main thing your page is about. So if it is the page for parking at the Rotorua Opera, then that's what your H1 tag should say. Rotorua Opera parking map, or something similar to that. So it just provides context to that page, and it helps Google understand that, okay, this isn't the main page about Rotorua Opera, this is the page specifically about parking at Rotorua Opera. So it's not going to send the entire world to that page if they search for the opera. It'll help just send the people who want the parking, which is really what you want. And internal and external links are very important. So you need to actually link to your pages. So not just links from the navigation, you actually need to have links from the text and links within the body of your content, so that it makes sense. People are reading it and they're halfway through a paragraph and they see the link that tells them to the takes them to the page that they absolutely want. Great, off they go to that, and that really benefits your organic search. And coming back to the philosophy really that I've mentioned before, one of Google's old philosophical phrases, I haven't heard them say it for a while now, but I think it still applies, is focus on the user and all else will follow. So rich content with video and social, and just do what you think makes sense for your visitors, and that is really what Google wants you to do. So there's a little wee snippet of, as I'm sure you're all well familiar with, the way that a search result is displayed. The title is in blue, and the description is grey and can't be clicked on. Now, the title on this one, that's fine. It's branded. You know that it's Stuff Events, which is from the Stuff website, and it shows you sort of the what and the where. And the description quite clearly is an automated one. So either they didn't write a description, or they have so many pages on their website, they're just letting Google do its own thing. And it's not that compelling. It doesn't really say anything that comprehensive in there. It's not disastrous, but it certainly, that to me is an automated Google one and not one that's been handwritten. So if you're looking for, if you're looking after a small site, absolutely get in there and write your descriptions yourself. Okay, well I think we'll just break for some questions now. So I will hand you back to Helen for a minute. Helen.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's fantastic. It has been incredibly informative and really easy to understand, so thank you. I feel like we're just soaking this up. So if anyone on the line has any questions, we haven't had any comments so far, but if you want to ask Tom a question, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. I thought some of the tips that you've been giving us around just simple things like updating Wikipedia and TripAdvisor were really excellent, and these sorts of things possibly are at the bottom of the list at times, and particularly when we're all so busy. So I think that's just such gold for us, so thank you. And also just in terms of embedding YouTube videos and Twitter feeds and ensuring that people stay on your site as long as possible is excellent. And it almost feels to me as if Google is a human. It's almost like the way you talk about Google at times. Google will punish you for this, or there's a very human quality to Google.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have a question?
Helen, it's Vicky here. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Hi. Tom, this is absolutely fantastic. It's such an interesting science and changing all the time. And in fact, you're making me feel better that I don't know everything about SEO, because, it's so complex. I was really pleased that you mentioned title tags, because I don't think that's something a lot of arts organisations are really aware of, that they can change the title tag on each of their pages and utilise keywords to help with SEO. But one thing I've found is a lot of organisations can't or don't seem to be able to access those tags. They have to go back to their web developer to do that. And I'm often saying, make sure your content management system allows you to do that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And you've really hit the nail on the head. If you are perhaps redesigning your site and you're sort of at the redevelopment or the new development phase talking with your developers, do insist on that. You don't need to be a mechanic, but it's like just being able to put the washer fluid in your, fill up your windscreen washer in your car. It's just one of those basic things that, you don't want to run off to the mechanic every time you want to put some more water in your windscreen wiper fluid. Just make sure that the content management system you have, which most websites will have and most web developers will provide to you, just make sure it has the basic ability to change the title tags. It's pretty standard for all developers to utilize the H1, H2, and H3, and that's again something that you'll probably find is throughout your site. And really, I think most of the advice I've left up on the screen here should be available with what comes out of the box from the vast majority of web developers. And if not, if you ask them, you'll often find that it's relatively simple for them to give you access to it, because often they've used the system themselves that has these things by default.
Yes.
One thing I did just mention before, I was just talking about having title tags that are automated. A big site like Stuff, they aren't going to have people manually writing all of these, so they will have a system. And if you look at the little example I have at the top of the screen that has upcoming opera and Rotorua - stuff events, they probably have a format where it chooses the page title, which is upcoming opera and Rotorua, and then automatically puts in, so it's grabbing the content from the page, upcoming opera and Rotorua, and then automatically putting stuff events at the end of it. So that whole title is going to be generated by the system, and it's probably unlikely that the editors at Stuff have any input and even could change that. But for you as a small organization, you're probably going to have the ability to do that. And a lot of web developers will actually say, we will do an automated title tag, but you can manually override it if you wish to, which is actually a really lovely little system to have. And if you don't get around to writing them, at least you've got a halfway decent one. And if you do want to change it, you can. So that's a good thing to ask for.
Thanks, Tom. I think we should continue on, if that's okay.
Great. Okay, well, I think that is, there we go, yep, the end of organic search. So paid search. Now, if we think about our dear close friend Google, and thank you for turning Google into a human being, which I personally think it is, paid search obviously pays Google's bills, and they are very, very keen to encourage people to click on ads rather than click on those pesky free-loading organic results. And it's a delicate balance. I mean, Google want to obviously make millions and buy that island they've always wanted, but there are some searches where there are no ads, so organic is a critical part of it. And I think Google actually has a pretty non-commercial and pretty long-term view on it. And I often see it where they will do the hard work rather than take the easy money. I have some searches where, for some clients, where I'm bidding $3 for a click, and Google is not even showing my ad. They're showing free results instead of taking my $3. And from a short-term point of view, you say, well, surely they should just take the money and put my ad up there. I'm offering $3 a click for it. But they deem that my ad isn't worthy. It's not good enough quality, and by that I mean it's not relevant enough for the user. So they just don't show ads at all, and the organic results are the only things displayed. So if you think about where Google are going, they would love to monetize everything. They know they can't, so they don't, but you really have to be in the game with paid search, particularly if you're getting into a competitive market or you're selling a commodity product. A lot of you will be in a fairly unique situation where you are the only opera in Rotorua, or you are the only venue called the Bruce Mason Centre. You are effectively monopolised, but there are a lot of other results that could be coming up there. So let's press on. A few little mechanical and health things you should do. Firstly, link your AdWords to your Google Analytics. And if you can't work out how to do that, just Google it and you'll find plenty of advice. I'm assuming that most of you have Google Analytics running on your site or some other web analytics program. The good thing about analytics, obviously, it's made by Google and it's free and it's incredibly powerful. But also you can link it with your AdWords, so you get rich analytical data that you can use within AdWords, and you get your paid search data going into your analytics, so you get better insight as to what your money is working towards. So that's something you should definitely do. The next thing you need to do is just think about the structure of your AdWords accounts. And the way they do it is they have campaigns, which are broad, ad groups, which are subsets, and I always structure them around the topics and themes and cost centers that my organization has. So if I were the Rotorua Opera, I would probably have ad groups based around campaigns based around opera. If I were maybe a venue, I might have ad campaigns based around the venue itself, and I might have a different one based around an upcoming season, and I might have a different one based around opera. So it's a generic opera and Rotorua kind of campaign. I'll go into an example to show you. So what I'm showing here is some of the work that I did on Auckland Live, and as Helen mentioned earlier, they rebranded from The Edge to Auckland Live. So we just sort of managed this process. It's possibly a little unusual because not many people sort of rename themselves. Most people stick with the old name. But we came up with 3 campaigns, and you'll sort of understand why we chose these 3 campaigns. So the first one, the campaign was called The Edge. And in that, we had one ad group, also called The Edge. It doesn't matter, they're named the same thing. And the theme around that was we wanted people who knew The Edge and who were going to be searching for The Edge, and obviously we were sending them somewhere that is no longer called The Edge. So that is very, very specific about the people searching for the legacy brand and sending them gracefully into the new brand, and perhaps just telling them on the way, hey, we're sending you to a page that you don't expect, and this is why. We don't have enough space to write an essay about it, but anyway, so that's a little one campaign, and we are only targeting the people who are looking for the old brand. Second campaign is Auckland Live, and this is more of a standard campaign. So anybody who has heard something on the radio, or they've read something in the Herald about Auckland Live as the new home for entertainment in Auckland. So we're targeting a lot of this is picking up the people who have heard something by word of mouth or offline media, or they saw it on the back of a bus, and they go, oh, what's this Auckland Live thing all about? And they then search for Auckland Live, and we're sending them to the new page. Now, one thing here is when you redo a site in a major way, there's a lot of confusion. There'll be old pages coming up in the Google search results. People will be heading off to the wrong place. So we actually thought, well, let's just pay to put some ads up that we guarantee are sending people to the right page. So it's almost like a giant sticking plaster, really, just helping guide people while the organic results got refreshed, because that can take days, weeks, and even months for the organic to update itself and find the new content. So the third campaign we did was about the venues, and in here we had lots of ad groups, and each ad group was related to one specific venue, being the Civic, the Auckland Town Hall, the Aotea Centre, and so on. So when people want to go to the Bruce Springsteen concert at the Civic, I don't know where he's playing it, he's played, hasn't he? Often if people know, I want to go to Bruce Springsteen and I know he's at the Civic, they will search for the Civic, or they'll search for tickets to the Civic. They won't mention Bruce Springsteen because in their mind, I've got to go to the Civic to buy my tickets. So these are specific to the venue. We're not doing Bruce Springsteen at the Civic, we're just doing the Civic. So it's really just helping, and again in this period where there's confusion over the old brand, the new brand, the old site, new site, and it's just helping push people to the right page. So I'm going to give you some tips, and we'll use the context of Auckland Live here because there's a few little things that I didn't do perfectly, which I never do. No one does. It's one of the important bits with paid search. It's observing and getting things better. So first thing, if you're setting up campaigns, you will, by default, set up a paid and search campaign. And I always separate my search campaigns from my display campaigns. So a display campaign is banners, and a search campaign is keywords and ads. They're quite separate things, and they have separate targeting, they have separate bidding. So I always just say, right, this campaign for the Edge is going to run on search only. If I want to do a campaign called the Edge and run it on the display network, I'll do a totally separate campaign and worry about that separately. Okay, so please, that's my first tip, separate them. A good analogy here is if you have two dogs and you take them for a walk, if one of them's a Chihuahua and the other one's a Rottweiler, you don't put them on the same lead. You end up with a strangled Chihuahua. So please think that as two different dog leads for your vastly different dogs. Okay, the next thing to do is think about the locations. Now, you can do some incredibly granular location targeting. First thing, if I am doing international AdWords, which I do for a number of clients, probably not so much for the entertainment industry, I always separate New Zealand from international because people are searching in a quite different context. An ad saying, come and see the Rotorua Opera, if you're doing it internationally, you probably have to put the context of New Zealand in the ad, whereas you don't, if you're just advertising to Rotorua locals, come to the opera, obviously you don't say New Zealand in the ad. So always separate that. Then what you must do is set up your regions and adjust the bid based on your catchment area. So think about how far are people going to travel to go and watch the Rotorua Opera. Probably not from Southland and Christchurch, but they may come from the Waikato and definitely come from Tauranga. Possibly they'll come from Auckland, but I really doubt it. So I'd be looking for the example of the Rotorua Opera. I would probably target definitely Rotorua City, definitely the Bay of Plenty, definitely the Waikato, and maybe just a little bit further afield, but I'd do a bit of experimenting with that. And here's an example from a client who works and operates in not just Whangarei, but also in Northland and right up to the rural boundary of Auckland City. So they want to target people who are in Silverdale, but they don't want to target people in Auckland City because their budget will be swallowed in a matter of minutes by the great heaving mass of Aucklanders. So you just see on this little map here, the first bit I targeted was Northland as a region, and you'll see that jaggedy line that's highlighted in blue. That is targeting the Northern region. Now you'll see it doesn't come down as far as the areas they want to cover, like Silverdale and Rosedale and Helensville, those sort of areas. Those are definitely within this client's area. So I could have targeted Auckland Province, but that goes from the boundaries there around Wellsford. It covers right down to Pukekohe and the whole of Auckland City as well. So it wasn't appropriate for me to target Northland and Auckland Province. So I thought the easiest thing to do was to do a radius, and I just put in 120 kilometres around Whangarei, and that gives us that nice circle, and that pretty much covers Helensville and those areas. So that is how I did my location targeting for that particular client, who literally is now going to show their ads approximately, and it's not perfect, approximately as far as Silverdale. Okay, next thing to think about is your ad copy. Now, the first thing I always say is always do 2 or more ads. Very, very simple. You don't know which ad's going to work best. I don't know which ad's going to work best. I've got some strong hunches and 14 years of experience, and I like to joke that I'm right 51% of the time, possibly a bit more than that, but I'm often pleasantly surprised. And if you run 2 ads, then Google will actually display the better ad more often, and you will often be surprised. So in this case, I ran 2 ads. One talks about Auckland Live, and the other one saying the Edge has a new name. Now, in this case, we thought the one talking about Auckland Live would be better because the people are searching for Auckland Live, so we don't need to talk about the Edge, but we just ran that anyway. And as you can see, if you look on the right-hand column there, the CTR, that's the click-through rate, one of them was 1.6%, and the other one is 2.8. So clearly the top ad works better. The other thing you'll just notice is in the percent served column, 92% of the ads were the better performing one and 7% were the worst performing ad. So Google actually looks at the results and serves the best ad more often. It still does the old ad and often enough that you can collect some valid information, but it really does push it into the corner. the one kind of ad that I'll often run is I'll often try a time-based ad. So, it might do, the Rotorua Opera, I don't know the opera very well. I don't know why I use it as an example, really. The season ends on the 23rd of July. We'll schedule that ad to end on the 23rd of July, and then you have your other ads that carry on 365 days a year. So you just schedule that. And you also should just use the ad rotation to optimize for clicks, and that is where it is there. Don't worry about the details of how to do that, because you'll have this presentation you can refer to at a later date. But by setting them to optimize for clicks, that is how you get it, making sure the best performing ad gets the majority of it. Now, you can have 10 ads if you want, but that's probably a few too many. I normally do 2, 3, sometimes 4 ads, and may the best one win. Keywords. Oh, I could talk for days about keywords, but I won't. Okay. Very important thing here is the ad quality score and the match type. Now, when you go into your AdWords, it will not, and look at the keywords, it will not actually show you the quality score and match type. So you have to customize your columns to get them to display. And those are the two, I think, the two most important things, and it's just a little odd that they're not defaulted. The quality score is how relevant your ad, your keyword, and your landing page are. So the better your quality score, the more targeted you are, and the more, the higher your ad will go and the less you will pay. So if you have a low quality score, you're going to have to bid 2, maybe 3 times more than your competitors. So, it affects your bottom line, it affects how your ads perform. So, if you have a quality score of 1 and your competitor has a quality score of 10, in theory, you would have to pay 10 times more per click to have your ad shown above their ad. So, if I have an ad with a quality score of 10, or sorry, a keyword with a quality score of 1, I know I'm way off target, and it's not in anyone's interest to run it. Okay, so it does affect your costs, and it affects how your ads are ranked. So, it's an absolutely critical little metric, this one. In terms of the keywords, there are 3 main kinds of keywords, and you should use all 3. Exact match, phrase match, and broad match, although I use a thing called modified broad. So I often repeat the keywords. So a phrase like Rotorua Opera, I would do an exact match of Rotorua Opera, a phrase match for Rotorua Opera, a modified broad match for Rotorua Opera, as well as a lot of variants of that, Rotorua Opera tickets and so on. So let's have a look. On the first line there, exact match, Rotorua Opera. That means when people search for Rotorua Opera, bingo, up comes my ad. I would also do the Rotorua Opera on the second line, so that when people come up with that exact phrase. Now there's a tiny, it gets a little bit grey. Google will do some some close matches, some synonyms, some stems. So, it does just blend it a little bit, but not very much. Exact is almost exact. Phrase is very important too, because it adds words before and after. So with the phrase Rotorua Opera, it will show up for searches for Rotorua Opera tickets or blah, blah, blah Rotorua Opera. So you know it's before and after Rotorua Opera. Modified broad allows me to get into those wacky searches that no one, even Google, has ever seen before. So what it is, it's a broad search, but you put the plus symbol there. And what that does is, if you look at the 4th line there, operatic performances in Rotorua. So it has kept Rotorua as an exact word, but it's allowing synonyms and close matches, so operatic performances. So obviously, if someone searches for operatic performances in Rotorua, do I want my ad to show up? Absolutely. An exact and phrase match won't cover operatic, whereas this one does. Okay, and you notice I've done it slightly differently on the second to bottom one, Rotorua plus Opera, where it now covers Rotor Vegas. I mean, I doubt that many people search for that, but anyway. And you can see why I don't use broad. It will start to get really tangential, and you'll start to get into things like the choral singers. Okay, so by doing both of them, you get the quality, the really niche ones with exact and phrase, and you get the broader ones with the modified broad. And you'll hopefully cover everything you need. I know I'm running out of time here, but I'll just quickly talk about negative keywords. They are one of the absolutely most critical things you can do. Now, going to the Auckland Live campaign, this is just the views of the campaign over the period we were running it. Now, the click line is in blue, and the click-through rate is in orange. Now, the first week, we were having a click-through rate of under 1%, and I was pretty horrified with that. And the click-through rate after that change period is up around 20 to 30%, which is a far better rate. We're showing the ads are being clicked, they are more relevant, we've got the keywords right. So why was it so low at the beginning? I was targeting pretty closely on phrases like Auckland Live, and I had a good negative keyword list. I was making sure I was eliminating a whole lot of things that I thought were irrelevant, but I had to dig deeper, and this is something that you've kind of got to dig in to find it. So when you're looking at your keywords, there's a little thing that says details, and again, you'll need to experiment, open up your Google AdWords and run through this little bit of the presentation. Go into details, search terms, all, and then you'll just need to modify the columns and go into attributes and keyword. Now, this won't make that much sense to you now, but please do it. You'll then end up with something like this. It will show you where your negative keywords actually come up. So it shows you the keywords you target and the search term that human beings actually entered into Google and ended up coming through on your ad. And you can see some of the horrible search terms that were that people were searching for, and my ads were coming up on. Home and living luggage travel accessories Auckland. I can understand why it came up. It's got the word living and Auckland. So what I then did was I made the word living, and also I did life for good measure. I made those negative, which means that when people search for home and living luggage travel accessories Auckland, my ad for Auckland Live does not come up. Where to live in Auckland? It's got live, well, live, live. They look the same to Google. It's got Auckland. So I had to do negatives for where to. And also I did live in as another negative. We were getting traffic coming through from people searching for Auckland News Live. Well, I did a negative for news, traffic. We had some clicks coming through from Auckland Live Traffic Cam. That got a bit frustrating, so I did that. And the bottom one there was really quite hilarious. Someone searching for live chicken for sale in Auckland. It's got the word live and it's got the word Auckland, so Google faithfully displayed my ad. So then I used negative keywords, obviously, for all kinds of domestic animals, and also live fish. If you search for that, the ad would have come up. So the interesting thing here was I prepared this as well as I could, but I couldn't have foreseen that the live chicken scenario would come up for my Auckland Live ads. So that is why the philosophy and the strategy is you've got to refine. You don't set your keywords and think, that's it, I've done it, I'm finished. Absolutely not. You've got to set it up and then look at it and improve it. So the official strategy is test, measure, optimize, and repeat, or as I like to say, ready, fire, aim. Because you don't know that the live chickens are going to come up in your feed until you actually look at what are people actually searching for. And then the ads came back. So we were getting a 1% click rate because the ads were showing when people wanted a live traffic cam. You know, Google doesn't want my ad to show up then. I don't want my ad to show up then. The people wanting a live webcam don't want my ad to show up. So by making the negative, we then got the ads working and only displaying where they were supposed to display. So it's a really, really key one. So that's why, you know, go back and have a look at the exact steps that I showed there and have a look at your negatives. You'll be horrified at some of the things that are contributing traffic or impressions on your ads. And you really need people often ask me, what's a good click-through rate? Well, 5% is probably good, but you could get up to 30 or 40 or 50%, and that shows you're spot on. If you've got a 1% click-through rate, you're really, really targeting the wrong people. As I say, go and write some more ads. Go and try some more keywords. And make sure you check your settings. If you are doing some free opera classes in Rotorua and your ads are showing to people in the South Island, yeah, you're wasting your time and money. So check your devices, check your ad schedule. You know, if there's no point in running an ad on a Sunday, then schedule it so that it doesn't display on a Sunday and you're not paying for Sunday clicks. I generally leave them running 24/7, but you may find that there's some really dead spots you don't want to advertise in. Okay, well, that is a rather rushed end there. So I've just put some resources here, and Google Webmaster Tools is excellent for going into your organic. There's a wonderful little, a simple search engine optimization checker called WooRank. You know, it's algorithmic and it's not always accurate, and I don't always agree with what it says, but it's a pretty good start. It'll actually have a look at your site and tell you, here are your high priority things that you should be looking at. So, and if you want any advice on anything to do with search engines, moz.com is the Bible that research engine geeks use all the time. So those are some great resources, and of course SureFire's blog, so please do go and have a read of that, and flick me an email if you would like us to put you on the email list for our weekly blog. And remember, ready, fire, aim. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll hand you back to Helen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. That was absolutely brilliant. Really, really packed full of insight and information. So really appreciate the time you've taken today to share that with us. It's the sort of webinar where I think I need to go back over it many times because there's so much rich information there that I think it will be really valuable to revisit. I know we're up to time. In fact, you were spot on for time, but we might have just a minute for a question if anyone has a burning question they'd like to ask you, and if they do, please unmute yourself by pressing *6. If no one has a question, then we might just wrap there. But I'd like to thank you, Tom, for your time, and just to let everyone know that this was actually the final webinar in the Optimize webinar series. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this year. We've had a great turnout, and I know that these webinars are incredibly valuable. We recently sent a capability building survey out to you, so we'd appreciate your feedback on the webinar series along with feedback on other Creative New Zealand capability building initiatives. And as Tom mentioned, all of these webinars are available on our website to view, and they are a great resource. So please do revisit them and dip in and share them with colleagues so that we can maximize the use of them for everyone. And yes, so that's it for this year, but we hope to be back next year. And in the meantime, thank you to everybody, and especially to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.